Yes, guys, in today's 3 More Points podcast episode, we are going to go through the real reason why Chelsea are currently firing and why there could well be a charge this season. Not saying for the title, or are we? Let's get into the podcast. Harry, welcome back to the channel. It is becoming an absolute joy to have you here every single week with only really more positive things to say. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, mate. I'm good. Yeah, George was hassling me this week. He was like, let's get on. I want to do the pod. He's absolutely loving it, guys, and I can't blame him, you know? It's good. It's good vibes.
I think also there's been a lot of good vibes on your channel. We saw Anthony Joshua fall very hard to the ground, and your 6 Things We Learned video was very good, with Dubois being the victor in the boxing. So make sure you check out Harry's channel. The link is down below. But that was a good fight too.
Yeah, mate, it was good, and the channel's growing really fast. I think we're just under 4K now, so it's moving fast. But how are you feeling, mate? Because I know you had a bit of a dodgy week.
Mate, honestly, I've never watched a Chelsea game on the floor of a bathroom until I watched us play Barrow on the floor in a bathroom. Like,
that's dedication, people.
Bro, if Chelsea didn't do the damage on the pitch, it would have been like one of the worst moments of my life. Like, to be there and, like, not knowing to sit on the toilet or, like, sit next to the toilet. You guys know what I mean, and that's the case of the scenario. There were obviously, within that performance, some very, very good individual displays, particularly, just to frontline it, the top 4, as in the front 4, all substituted out. We made 11 changes to the starting 11. It's the front 4, really, that were the ones to shout about. But, obviously, NKUNKU gets a hat-trick. There's a big question mark right now about how long can it be without Christopher NKUNKU playing from the very start in the Premier League? Do you think it's something that we have to see, and how do we go about doing that? I think it's a big question that we should go through today.
Yeah, I think it's so difficult, isn't it? Because we're getting the results as well in the Premier League, and when you look at the balance of that front line now, it's sort of growing every game, the chemistry is developing every game, and you really don't want to disturb it. And when you think about NKUNKU's best 2 positions, which would be striker or number 10, that's where probably 2 of our highest performers are playing right now. When you look at the balance on the wings, you know, you'd say, okay, the lower performing players in that front 4 would be one of the wing players probably. Not to say they're performing badly, but just a bit, it's a level under, I would say. But then the issue with that is that you then have to put Palmer wider because he has to stay in the team. So it's a very difficult equation to figure out. But what I would say is that we're only 1 injury away from NKUNKU coming into the side, and we both know, George, that we don't usually have a problem with providing injuries. So, yeah, I think that's my basic feeling about it. What do you think? Do you see a natural place for him to go into the team? Who would you be dropping if you were going to put NKUNKU in for the next game?
I think, just to caveat it, we're not saying here, and I really hope Harry isn't saying here, that we hope that there's an injury so that it just happens naturally. And NKUNKU's just like, oh, well, you're not on the bench this week, mate, because he's broken his leg. Just like drop him in there like he's a bath bomb in bath water.
Do you never have that when you're playing FM and you're like, oh, I kind of hope one of these players gets injured because they're all getting pissed off with me.
What that means, Harry, is that you don't understand the game well enough. You don't understand football well enough to be able to create new positions for someone. And at the end of the day, you're just hoping for an easy option here. But in all honesty, I think there is only so long that we can go without seeing NKUNKU in this starting 11. I think when you look at that finishing capabilities that he's got, that second goal is outrageous. The confidence to do it. He's come out post-match and said that he had a conversation with Gusto saying, put it to me at the near post. Like, he's almost like he's toying with the opposition because he just knows he's got the ability to execute whatever it is he's thinking about. And I think right now, Chelsea have got players that are kind of playing on like this autonomy setting. Do you know what I mean? And I think we've got to give a lot of credit here to our manager. I think as much as we can discuss, and we will, how does NKUNKU come into the side? What is the most likely position for NKUNKU to come into? I think credit's got to be given to how quickly Maresca seems to have got this squad in the palm of his hand, and instructions are seeming like everybody knows what to do, where to go, where to have the ball, where to release the ball. And I think we've got to give some serious credit to Enzo Maresca for the way that he's managed to get this team playing so well, so early.
Definitely. And I really like the way he's using as we talked before, we've got like a kind of tiered approach to the competitions we're in, and we have a squad that's sort of there for each of those competitions. And it's almost like, when you have your academy players, you try and get them playing the same way the first team's playing. It's the same thing. And it just means that like outside of those Premier League matches, outside of training, they're getting game experience playing in that system. So, when we do have problems in the first team or someone's performance level drops, someone gets injured, we've got a ready-made replacement ready to jump straight in and even compete for those positions. So it's a really good, I think I really like the way he's approached it. It's really good. And we talked about it earlier in the season, like when we were talking about that European competition that we're in, it's like, how do the players get up for that? That's the only way you'd see us not going through. And it's just really good to see that everyone's motivated and everyone's fighting for positions. Like they're going out there and they're staking their claim for those roles. And that's what you want to see. You don't want to see a bunch of prima donnas who are like, oh, I'm too good for this, I don't have to do this. So that's great, but it's also really important that Maresca strikes the balance of giving those guys a chance, because otherwise you're going to get demoralized, disillusioned, and you're going to realize that you're actually just a second string player. So yeah, making sure that competition's there, making sure that if there is a game when you could play one of those guys where maybe stylistically it suits better, then you do that. I actually just wanted to say as well, like on your point just there about Gusto being back, that's great. That's like almost that natural right back's almost the final piece of the puzzle at the moment in terms of like how you look at the structure of the team and what we've been missing. What we've been getting by with Disasi at right back's been a bit brutal. So yeah, I'm glad that Gusto is going to be fit hopefully for the next game. Do you think he'll start the next one?
I think so. I think he showed enough. Like, I think if you're fit, you're fit. And if you've managed to start a game, like obviously he comes off at half time, but I think that was probably the 45 minutes that he needed to put himself in the starting 11. But I think, again, to keep it on Maresca for a second, I think the main thing about keeping the players and I think it's a good point that you make about if players aren't starting the big games, and let's be honest, like, away at West Ham is like 10x the size of at home to Barrow in the Carabao Cup. Like, if you're starting the West Ham game, that's when you're like, flipping out, I'm Chelsea's main guy. I think it's the fact that he's not shy of making a substitution at half-time. Like, for me personally, when it comes to like the little nuanced things that make me like a manager and again, comparatively, not even just to Poch, but like to so many Chelsea managers before him, how many times could you watch a football match and know that the Chelsea 11 that's out there right now, if they're 1-0 down or if it's 0-0, they're not going to score. We're not going to get a goal back because the players out there just weren't good enough. And I think having the squad depth this season that we do to be able to be like, all right, cool, well, this isn't working. I think Maresca obviously knows before the match that it could be a case of half-time, something needs to change. And then it's the shock factor that's winning us matches right now. It's either blistering countering speed, which we didn't necessarily have last year, or individual quality that can come in and fit collectively into a perfect piece of a jigsaw, which is amazing to see right now for Chelsea. And NKUNKU is like, if he's not a starter right now, like he's literally for me the whole picture. Like if you're looking at someone that you can bring on in multiple different parts of the field, like I think NKUNKU, and Maresca said it himself, he can play anywhere. And I think that might be why. That's actually, I've only just literally in my head as I'm saying this out loud, realised that this is probably why he's not starting. Because Maresca genuinely thinks he is that can-do-everything player. And probably by default has told him, like, you're actually the best player here. And right now it's about making sure that everybody is aware of the roles, because it's the roles that are making us so strong collectively. So I think maybe it's just a case of if players like Sancho, Madueke, Palmer, Jackson, if they hadn't have done so well, then NKUNKU would already be there in any of those front four positions. I've literally only just thought that in my head, but I think that's genuinely what it is. Yeah, no, I agree with you. George, I want to. You said a word just before that really triggered a thought for me, which was you used the word jigsaw. And we were talking before, like, about off the pod, we were saying, like is Maresca better than we thought he was going to be? And I want to get your answer to that in a second. But I think the thing for me that's made him so good so far is that jigsaw concept where, like, he's got this very clear system with a clear set of instructions. And the thing about a jigsaw is when you're building a jigsaw, you got the picture on the box, right? So you know what it's going to look like at the end. And it's easy for anybody to go and build it. But if you're a manager that doesn't have such a set style of play, set system,
set responsibilities and roles, you've got a blank canvas and you've got to just go and paint something. And when you're a player that has no experience or limited experience, that's very, very difficult to do. And so I think that the fact that he's come in, he's got a very progressive style of football, it's very modern. For me, that's been one of the keys in the fact that we've started the season so well. And, people like instructions. People like to know what success looks like. And I think in this Maresca system, you've got that. But I wanted to ask you on that point just there, is Maresca better than you thought he was? What were you expecting? Is this the guy that you thought you were going to get when they said we're getting Maresca from Leicester, the championship winning manager?
I have to hold my hands up because I think you're going to hold your hands up later on in this podcast for something that you might have got completely wrong. I've got Maresca totally wrong. I've got him completely and utterly wrong. And I think I just looked at the fact it was Leicester. I looked at the fact that Leicester fans weren't even disappointed that he left. And I'm like, how can this guy come into Chelsea and make it work? But the one main reason why it has worked so quickly is because Chelsea have got so many quality footballers. And I think at Leicester, yes, you're working with the best squad in the Championship, but there is only so far in such an aggressive, competitive league that you can take a team to just blitz teams and blow teams away. And, let's be real, Chelsea have won 3 matches by 3 goals or more, struggled in a couple of them, got a good result in one of those struggles, lost one and drawn one. It's not perfect. And I think as much as I've been coming out and saying, yeah, Chelsea are back, Chelsea are back. I feel like Chelsea are back because I'm excited to watch us play again. I can clearly see that players are enjoying themselves again. I can see that the manager is willing to adapt and change things. And that healthy competition for places means that complacency is no longer a case here. You've not got players that can just tick over. I think when it comes to defenses, even the defense, the defense is currently imperfect, but it's growing into something great. Colwill is looking fantastic. Cucurella, honestly, I've got so many great things to say about Cucurella. I think he's an unbelievable footballer. I think he's so versatile. I think he's so useful in this Chelsea system. I think at this point in time, we're only going in the right direction. But in terms of NKUNKU, man, I think we've got to, if there is going to be one way that isn't just an injury that gets him into the starting 11, I'll say my thoughts first, and then you can tell me what you think about it. I think that right now, I see, and this is crazy because I said last week that Madueke's undroppable and he is the star boy that we can hope to build around with Palmer this season. But I think realistically, Cole Palmer might have to move back out to the right-hand side because if Jackson is scoring goals and getting assists the way that he is now, he can't be dropped from this team. You cannot take a striker out of a side when he's scoring goals for fun and assisting. And he's so good at everything else off the ball. Jackson up top, NKUNKU behind him, second striker. That's where NKUNKU loves to play. That's where he's at his best. And then the left-hand side is either Sancho or Neto, dependent on the opposition. And I think what you've got there with those 4 players is a balance of players that are willing to come back and do the defensive work, which is very important. Maresca said it himself. He can't just throw everybody out there up front because there has to be a balance. And if it's not me or you defending because we're not on the pitch, the players have to understand those parts of the role. So I think for me, that is the way I see it. And then, Madueke could also, but then he can't play on the left. So then that takes Noni out of the side. But that for me is the only feasible way right now that I see it happening. Or Jackson moves over to the left wing, but then why? Sancho's doing a great job. He's got the quick feet. He's there's so many good players, Harry. I'm so confused.
Yeah, you can't move Jackson away from striker. You can't move Jackson away from striker because for his development, if nothing else, he's finally starting to show the right movements, the right finishing ability. He's reading, other players' movements much better to get into the right position. So you definitely cannot drop Jackson from striker right now. I only want to see him playing as a striker. I've definitely said in the past, why not Jackson on left wing? But that was when he was struggling. Now I'm he has to play. Just keep playing him at striker. Do you know what I think? And what you just said, I think it actually really works. I don't want to see Palmer out of his best position. So what I would look to do is if you're going to have if you're going to have NKUNKU as the 10, if Palmer's got to play right, then I want Gusto to be an overlapping fullback. I don't think you do this unless Gusto can play or James can play, because then you get that width on the right-hand side and it lets Palmer tuck inside a bit more, and then you essentially have 2 10s, which that sounds unreal to me. Like, that sounds so... It sounds so tasty, doesn't it? And then, obviously there'll be moments where Palmer has to go wide right, but there's also moments where Palmer can tuck in and NKUNKU goes wide right, because like you said, he's got that versatility to go into different areas in the final third. So for me, I think that sounds just so exciting. And it's difficult because I also, I love Noni, and I think he's developing so well. And a lot of it's just going to depend on, like we said before, what is the other team doing? How do they set up? Because there will be times when, you want to isolate a particularly weak fullback, for example, and then you play Noni, for sure. You want Noni going 1v1 against a fullback who's maybe not that good at defending or is not the Premier League level or whatever it is. And then you definitely don't want to have 2 10s because you just want more, let's carry the ball, let's be aggressive, let's attack. But then there's teams that will sit deep that are defensively very good. And then having those 2 10s sounds like a really, really good idea. So, just so much tactical versatility. I think NKUNKU, it's been a combination of rebuilding his fitness, getting him to a good place in terms of that, him finding his form and working his way into the side. Just finding the right game where it's necessary to have that kind of double 10, I suppose. But I think it's so exciting, man, because the reason
I'm excited just listening to you speak right now.
Yeah, but other players played really well in that game. I think the reason NKUNKU's the one we're focusing on is because he's the one who's probably him and Palmer are probably level in my mind in terms of what I've seen them do in professional football, in terms of moments, the touches that they can produce, the moments of quality. They're the 2 guys in the squad where I'm like, you are our 2 best players. You're unbelievable. So it's how do you get them both on the pitch? That's the conversation that we're having, right? So I don't know. I struggle to drop anybody right now, but again, if it's the right game, I think you put Palmer to the right and you put NKUNKU behind Jackson, and I think that's a beautiful setup.
I think it's about timelines of players' acceptance. And I think when you look at the personalities of all of those front players, you've got some huge personalities in there, which I think, again, huge credit to Maresca for being able to kind of tame the egos. Noni Madueke's a very confident guy. Jadon Sancho has clearly had arrogance issues that have made him flipping hated by Eric Ten Hag and become known as a waste of money for Manchester United. These aren't players that are really good but don't know it. These are players that are actually really good and know that they're really good. You've got someone like Pedro Neto, who goes from being the main guy at Wolverhampton Wanderers, comes in, and even he would have been why have Chelsea just bought Jadon Sancho? They've just bought me. But everybody seems happy for each other. Even Mudryk, right? As much as he's probably not going to be anywhere close to the shout for this starting 11 in the Prem now. But even a couple of weeks ago, Mudryk was an option now. He was really good against Barrow, I thought. I think he played well. And I think the way that he seems happy for everybody, there's rumours coming out at the moment that both Mudryk and NKUNKU were kind of playing for their Chelsea futures, which I'm not sure how truthful all of that is. I think because NKUNKU's on pretty good wages, there might be a case of Chelsea are willing to just let him go because he's on those high wages, because Esteval's coming, Paez is coming. But I think right now, the way that Maresca seems to have galvanized this squad is massive, and it's a huge credit to him. And I just think it's about how long can it be if nobody gets injured, which, let's be real, it would just be so typical of Chelsea this year that we have, the problem is that we don't have enough injuries and we can't fit enough players in. How long until some of these players that might not be starting because of the quality that is just abundant above them, how long is it before players are I don't know, I should be playing, I remember the biggest years and best years of my career, let me go. Do you think that's an issue that we might face?
Yeah, probably. But, I think that such is the nature of having a big squad and lots of young players coming through and having that policy. It just means that the ones that aren't quite good enough or aren't the starters, basically, they'll get moved on, and then the young players come in that are the next generation of talent, and then they support the first team, and then one of them, whichever ones are good enough, they'll take the positions of the players in the first team, and you create a really nice competitive environment. My prediction is that we loan Mudryk in January, because I think we have more than enough coverage in the front four positions without him. And I think he really needs a loan move. I think he's crying. We've been saying that for a year and a half. He's crying out for a loan move, Mudryk. Like, he really needs it. He just needs to go somewhere where the level isn't as high, where he can feel free to make mistakes, where he can try things and just have a bit more space to like get his touches on the ball, because it's so difficult in the Premier League if you've not found your momentum, because there just is no space and time unless you're a really good player. It's very, very challenging to develop in that environment. So I think he really needs that loan move. I'm not ruling out that he can still become a very good player, but right now I just don't think we're the right place for him to get what he needs. But George, we've been talking about this Maresca system. We've been talking about the performance levels so far, and like why is it that we've had such a good start? What are the reasons? To your mind, like who have been the key players in the system that you think are really making it tick, and like who are the standout performers for you at the moment that are like enabling this all to work, basically?
I mean, I think the levels of how good we're seeing it have got a lot to do with system players and players that have fitted into the system. But before I say who those players are, credit to Sanchez, who has stepped up and won us points so far, which makes the season look better than it is, which is 100% fact. But in terms of like I think there's three players for me behind the attackers that have really excelled, and you can see positionally, confidence-wise, they're so key to the way that we're playing right now. And for me, those three players are Levi Colwill, Marc Cucurella, and Moises Caicedo. And I think Caicedo is such a big one to discuss, so we'll talk first about Colwill and Cucurella. First thing, like for me, it's just a breath of fresh air, and it's almost like a huge weight is lifted off my shoulders just to see Colwill playing as a flipping left centre-back. Like, how many times have I just been looking at a Chelsea team and looking at how many signings we've made predominantly and being like, how can we spend billions of pounds on players and yet still play players out of their correct positions? The way that Colwill can pick a pass is fantastic. And I think one of the key things that you can even see against Barrow, which would have, by the way, been the perfect time to kind of like, if you imagine in like, look at this on the screen, guys. This is a stream deck, yeah? And imagine if we're comparing this stream deck to the way that Chelsea play, all of these buttons are like autonomous things that happen. These are actions. And what Maresca's done is he set all of these buttons at the top to buttons that are like, pass the ball quickly, run forwards, get into this position, get into that position, and everything is just happening autonomously. There's nothing predictable about what Chelsea are doing, and I think that is because you've got players playing correctly who are so comfortable on the ball, and that is, for me, the most important thing. Marc Cucurella, when he inverts inside, it looks like he's been a DM his whole life. When he goes forward, like, the man looks like a man on a mission. I don't know if it's the hair and the fact he just looks as though he's like, I don't know what it is, but we look so confident with the ball. That, for me, is such an important thing.
Yeah, 100%. I think I also agree. Like, I think Colwill's starting to look great, and I'm so relieved and happy about that because, he's a player that I really like, and we've all wanted someone to come through in that JT position since he's left the club and start leading us and start turning in big performances for us. I actually noticed that he switched from JT's old number to Thiago Silva's old number this season, so that was an interesting little subplot there. But clearly, he got a lot from Thiago Silva while he was at the club, and I think he gave a nice message when Thiago left. And I think he's growing into that role. I think he can be that top centre back for us, and I'm so happy to be able to say that because I just think he's such a big talent. I was sort of dreading that he might not develop fast enough. We might lose. The club might do the PSR thing with him, cash in, and he goes and fulfills his potential somewhere else. So I'm just so happy that he's starting to do it here with us. And like you say, that passing range against West Ham that we saw was just brilliant. The way he got it through the lines into midfield really quickly was so good to see. And also just his aggression. Like, he just showed a real aggression in that game, but a controlled aggression, and that's what you want to see from him, because we have talked about that, how sometimes it balls over a little bit. Marc Cucurella, again, I completely agree. He's absolutely essential to the system that we have. Interestingly, I saw Chilwell got some minutes against Barrow. I didn't see the game. I saw the highlights. But I saw Chile came on for a bit, which was nice to see. And, I wonder if he will... We just kind of questioned before, will he be reintegrated? It's mad to say it. Like, I never, ever would have thought I'd be saying this when, when Cucurella was in his first season at Chelsea. But we don't really need to worry about that because he's fulfilling that inverted left back role so well that we don't even think about Chile not playing, which is just a bizarre world to be living in.
It is.
And then Caicedo,
Ben Chilwell's European champion, yet can't get anywhere near the Chelsea team. Mental.
And if you go and watch the performance in that final, just the fullbacks in that game, him and James, but the performance was disgusting. It was just levels and levels above anything I've seen in a long time from fullbacks. I mean, it was incredible, both of them. But anyway, Caicedo as well. I have to hold my hands up because we are all reactionary. Like, we all change our feelings very quickly, and it's hard to be patient and gather like a big collection of data to like say what we think is the right thing. But I have to say that when we did our podcast a couple of weeks ago, we were picking teams now and teams 6 months from now. I had Enzo and Lavia as the midfielders, but watching the way Caicedo has been playing, the passing range, the pressing, the timing of his tackles, the last ditch challenges. You can't take him out. What more do you want from a midfield player? So I want to revise my opinion that I sort of put forward, and I would say that now 6 months from now, Caicedo will be in the team for sure if he keeps playing like that. Brilliant, and he does seem to start the season a little bit slowly as well. He did last year too. So hopefully finding his rhythm now and finding his role in the system and just looking absolutely fantastic. But I also want to say, George, that you missed out Jackson, and I think that something we need to remind ourselves is that one of the biggest problems under Pochettino, and thank the Lord that we're not hearing it this season, is how Chelsea have one of the best XGs in the league, and yet we can't score goals. So the chance creation's still very, very good, but we're actually scoring now. And that's not just down to Jackson, but it is also down to Jackson. You need that striker making good movements, finishing clinically, and he is growing more and more into that striker role. So I just wanted to get his name in there as well.
I mean, I think we'll finish on Jackson. But I think even the second goal that we scored kind of epitomises, the second goal against West Ham epitomises why Chelsea have been so clinical. Because look at Caicedo's pass, how it just takes out the whole West Ham team. And before you know it, like within a second, Jackson is in on goal. Like, that is the difference. Last season, we're talking about XG because the ball would be in the box for like a minute. Then it might fall to Jackson where he's got one split second chance to like not even take a touch and control it, but he's just got to shoot, or it's put across the face of goal. Like, Chelsea aren't scoring or trying to score anymore these kind of goals where it's like you've got one touch, you've got 1 second to just get the ball in the right place and put it in. That's a difficult chance. It looks easy, but like, it's easier and I think the reason why Caicedo is able to even play that pass is because not only were West Ham like woeful, and as much as the Premier League will tell you that the only reason that Chelsea won 3-0 was because West Ham was so bad, they won't credit Chelsea, of course, we know that. There's an agenda against our football club. We'll roll with it. But the fact of the matter is, the opposition players have got too many things to focus on now. There's too much dynamic movement from the right, too much dynamic movement from the left, and it allows someone like Caicedo to not only be that enforcer in the middle, with like, I think the most tackles in a game from a Chelsea player since Marcus Alonso in 2019, I think. Like,
what a
unbelievable.
Stat attack from George there. Bloody hell.
There you go. Dropping them in left, right and centre. But like, it was just
Marcus
massive.
Alonso, a prolific tackler for Chelsea.
Mate, do you know what? As much as Marcus Alonso is one of the most frustrating players to watch, like, just so many great moments from that guy. But Caicedo is now becoming a moments player. Like, it's such a beautiful pass. Like, to be able to add that into a game, and I think that's where Kante, and I think we should talk about a comparison here with Kante, because a lot of people are doing it now. Like, the reality is, Chelsea needed to replace a lot of players. You needed a centre-back to replace Thiago Silva and John Terry. Never happened. Colwill is now showing he could be that. We needed to replace Kante because you basically need to replace two players when Kante is sold to Saudi Arabia. And Caicedo is now becoming that. But not only can he tackle, the passing. Like, it's like he's playing the game when he's not got the ball at 150 miles an hour. But then as soon as the speed camera comes, he just plays the right balanced weighted pass, slows everything down a little bit. I think in terms of like the balance of a midfielder, I think he's got everything. I think right now he's the top rated DM in European football right now. And I think
really
also up there, Yeah, I think in terms of
How
like
does
the
how does that work?
CIES ratings, I don't actually know, to be quite honest. Like, it doesn't matter, all right? Like
Yeah.
he's there, he's in the conversation, and I think Andre Santos as well at Strasbourg is also very high in that list, which is also interesting moving forward, because it kind of puts pressure on your Enzo Fernandez's of the world, the Lavias of the world when they come back. But yeah, for me, Caicedo as well right now, if he can maintain these levels, like Chelsea are looking at a spine. We're looking at like a serious quality spine. And I think that he's so important to the system in whatever way he's being asked to play, whether it is like just sit there in front of that back four or get forward and progress with the ball and make a killer pass. And then at the other end, you've got to have the striker who is able to finish. And I think when we talk about Jackson, like, is it the fact that he's just developing better, or is it about the quality of opportunity that he's having that actually suits his game more? Like, Jackson is a better runner with the ball than he is arriving into the box to just hit it first time. Or, you know, like, I think for me, it's about where we're getting Jackson on the ball. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's right. I definitely think that I'm seeing more moments now where we are transitioning. We're getting chances in transition now a lot more. So there's more space to run at teams. And you just gave me a player comparison, which was Caicedo and Kante. I'm going to give you one now that I'm going to get slated for. But you know,
we love
but
it when Harry turns up with slate muffins.
Here we go. So the reason I'm saying this is because of some similarities in the development and the way they play, not in terms of the levels they're hitting, but there are parts of Jackson that remind me a bit of Thierry Henry, because I think it was when he was at Monaco, Henry actually played on the left, and Jackson started life as a left winger. And you could see in the game against West Ham, Jackson likes pulling into that left channel, carrying the ball in that position, cutting inside and shooting, and that's something Henry used to do a lot. Now, technically, massive difference. I'm not saying Jackson's going to be Thierry Henry before everyone starts losing their mind, but you know, it's good to see us like playing to his strengths is what I'm trying to say. I don't remember many times last season where Jackson was able to pull left and then go, you know, carry the ball through that position. Mostly he was kind of having half chances in the box. I will say though that I do think he is becoming a little bit more clinical as well, because there were some massive chances that he missed last season. You know, he was very, very inconsistent with his finishing. And still now, that's going to be there. I think it will be there for a bit of time to come. But he is getting better. He is getting better at finishing those chances. And what I liked about the goals he scored at West Ham was, especially the one you just mentioned with the Caicedo through ball, he had a lot of time to think. And that's usually the enemy of the striker. You know, strikers just want to be reactionary. You know, it's all muscle memory. It's just boom, in the net, done. He had time to think about that finish, and he slotted it. It was a great goal. And you know, that's encouraging for me. You know, he made his mind up. He decided what he wanted to do with it, and he went and scored the goal. And that's just brilliant to see. So yes, I think it's a combination of things. I think it's Jackson improving. I think it's him developing as a player, more time as a striker in the Premier League, and a system where we're really trying to create those chances where we win the ball back quickly in the final third and we recycle possession fast, and we create those moments on the counter as well as, you know, the slower build-up play. You know, and that's something I love to see, mate, because I'm not someone... Look, I fully accept how good Man City are, but do I love watching Man City? I find it quite boring a lot of the time. And for me, Klopp's Liverpool was like the epitome of exciting football, like that speed, that aggression, winning the ball, going for the goal, being direct. You know, we grew up watching Mourinho's Chelsea, which was always about speed and power and breaking. So that's never going to leave my like DNA of as a football fan. I like fast, speedy play. I like quick counters. I like aggression. So for me to have that incorporated into the way we're going about our business is really good. And just that goal, look, I have to say that the West Ham defensive line was absolutely shocking. But the way we won it back, quickly knocked the ball around and boom, through ball. And Jackson makes the movement and it's there. And it just fantastic. So good to watch.
Yeah, it's the same with the Palmer goal too, isn't it? It's like one pass, get it on his left foot, put him in the right position, give him like an opportunity and an angle, and boom, we're going to score. I think for Jackson, there's two things really that have, and it's a very interesting point you make about how Jackson works better when he's got the time to think. I think when it comes to like why Jackson's been so good, I think the fact that we didn't sign Osimhen is obviously number one. But number two is how good is it to have a striker where he's kind of doing what strikers do in reverse. And what I mean by that is most of the time a striker is known for being able to just score and finish, and that's what defines them as a striker. With Jackson, in terms of his development, we have seen from the very get-go that it was the dropping wide into the channels, dribbling with the ball, recovering the ball, that was his strong points. And that goal, the second goal against West Ham, is like, that is basically, if you were to advertise Nicholas Jackson and put like one moment as his advert to show what he can do as a player, that second goal against West Ham is Nicholas Jackson at his very best, when he's got a bit of time to think. And like, I think if you can train into Jackson this like natural striking instinct, like remember how Michael Owen in the box was just like unplayable. I'm trying to think of someone else. Like, this is going to sound crazy, but like a Darren Bent, you know, like if the ball's in the box wobbling around, he's going to score. He's going to score. Yeah. Like, I think if you can train that element of him into it, where he kind of, you want the game to slow down for him in his brain in those moments. And I think when a striker isn't very good in front of goal or panics, it's because they think that the time that they've got is even less than they actually do. Do you know what I mean? And like, I think
I do know what you mean, yeah.
Like, you could compare it to boxing in a way where, like, sometimes you've got like someone who's a really quick hitter, but they don't just hit straight away. They're not like, I'm quicker than you, so they go straight in and try and like beat the man for punches to try and like get more numbers. Yeah. I think with Jackson, he just needs to like understand that sometimes he might not have literally the same amount of time in the box, but in his brain, if he can like switch it on like he's got the time, then I think the quality of the finish improves. And I think that is the key to his next stage of the development, where if he can do that and become a bit more clinical, if Chelsea are having to like put the ball in the face of goal in the 6-yard box, then I think we're talking about a seriously elite footballer. Like, I think the numbers that Nicholas Jackson's already putting up are just outrageously good. But like, I think we're talking like crazy levels if he can just improve that little bit in probably the 6-yard box, really.
Yeah, and it's that word composure. You know, it's just like you just tried to describe there. It's just slowing down. It's just slowing everything down, isn't it? It's just seeing the game in slow motion, not rushing your work, understanding that if you do the right things, then you know the quick action will work. And I think there probably is. I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head. I'm trying to think if. I don't think Van Persie, for example, was always the most clinical in the box striker. I'm trying to think if there's any others off the top of my head that have sort of added that to their game as they've gone along. Because for my money, he was someone that only kind of came good towards the end of his career in terms of like hitting those big goal scoring numbers. Might be talking out my arse there, but that's the feeling I have. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that really added that, because it is that kind of old adage in football, isn't it? That you know, you either have it or you don't in terms of that goal scoring. But then there's also the argument that he might not need that per se. I mean, to go to the world level, yes. But we have other players that will crash the box, and we have other players that will... And I think working with NKUNKU can only help him, because I think NKUNKU is that guy in the box. You know, he's so sharp. So, yeah, he just needs to add a bit of composure, a bit of calmness to his game, and try and find that sort of... You know, yes, you can run with the ball and take your time and slot it, but can you also just instantly react and get a shot on target in the bottom corner, you know? Can you time your runs well? That's probably the hardest thing in football. So, yeah.
I think if you were to add NKUNKU's finishing to Nicholas Jackson in the box, then you've got a 30-goal-a-season striker. But that's why it's such an interesting thought exercise to think, well, surely Maresca has got to see how great Nicholas Jackson is at almost everything else. Finishing, improving, yes. But, like, if you can get NKUNKU's finishing into that team as well, like, the goals, man. Like, I think this season, I can see us slapping teams up so often. Like, we've already scored. We've already won 3-0, 5-0, 6-2. Like, and we're only into the end of September. Like, let's just look forward a bit to Brighton then at the weekend, because that is the game that we've got next. Saturday afternoon, they've got no manager on the sidelines. Hurzeler was sent off in that draw against Nottingham Forest, who are also unbeaten, and Chelsea's next opponents after Brighton. So, interestingly, we've got 2 home games now before the international break, as well as a Conference League game at home. What are we saying about Brighton Like, is this like the real test for Chelsea to see where we're at? Because Brighton have also got a new manager in with new ideas, fresh style, looking really good. Yep. They haven't lost yet. Like, this is a serious challenge, isn't it?
Yeah. This is a really good test because West Ham are shipping goals for fun at the minute. Outside of the Chelsea game, even, they've not been good defensively. Whereas I think Brighton are a lot better defensively this season compared with last season. So it's a really good test. They've had some issues with injuries and things like that. They've had players coming back in this season as well. And I think they look good. So it's a proper test. If we can win this one well, then it's going to get me very, very gassed, basically. How do you feel about it?
I'm the same. I think the more that we keep winning, and the clean sheets are a bonus. Like, post-international break, I haven't seen Chelsea concede a goal in September, I don't think, apart from Palace at the start. So I have seen us concede a goal. But, like, I think Chelsea fans were looking for something to, like, get us excited. I think we were too focused on all the off-the-field stuff. It's almost embarrassing in a way for us as fans that at the start of this season, we were already kind of like, screw it, the season's done, it's gone, because, like, look, we can't even, like, the owners can't even get on with one another. Like, what chance has the team got? And I think the credit, as much as it's been, like, throughout this pod, we've been trickling in and, like, putting in credit to Maresca here. Also, like, massive credit to the players for just completely switching off from all of the shit that's going on above them and delivering. And I think if you look at 6 matches played, 4 wins, 1 draw, 1 defeat, and that defeat is against the flipping champions, Manchester City, that is about as good of a start as you could ever imagine. Like, and even in a Premier League now, where you need 90 points to win the league at minimum, and maybe that doesn't win you the league, like, that's a phenomenal start for any side. To only drop, like, flipping 5 points or whatever is unbelievable. So I think if we beat Brighton here, then, like, I don't know how many weeks it's going to be until I start getting into the whole, can we?
Sound like you're already starting it at the start of the episode, mate.
I am. I think it's exciting.
Well,
you know, I think if we win this weekend, then I'm saying to everyone that we've already won the league. Joking.
Well, how much has Rodri's season-long injury contributed to that feeling?
Well, I only found this out just before we started recording this podcast. I was like, how is he out for the whole season? Like, it didn't look like anything really happened, but unfortunate for him. I don't ever want to see a player get injured. If they're for another side, like, to see a serious injury like that, like, I love football. I don't want to see one of the best midfielders in the world missing a season of football in a career that's already too short. So, yeah, Rodri is out. Like, what's that going to do to City? Arsenal, like, I can't believe we're actually ending this podcast with, like, a genuine, like, could we?
Odegaard injury.
But we are.
No, well, I tell you. Yeah, well, I tell you what I would like to do quickly is, because I'm interested to hear what you say to this. So I've got one thing that I'll be really looking for in the next game. So I'll tell you my one thing, and then if you could tell me one thing, then we can end it there. So the one thing that I really want to see in this game against Brighton, because I think they are a level up, a couple levels up from West Ham, and I think that, you know, in terms of winnable matches that also are really quite challenging, this kind of epitomizes that for me. So for me, the number one thing that I want to see in this game is us not getting overrun on the counter in midfield, in through the middle of the pitch, because that is, I want to see us tested now against a side that can set up very well, defensively very strong. I want to know that issue is sorted before I start getting really excited, because I think that, you know, in boxing there's this adage which is styles make fights, and it's the same thing in football. You know, some teams are better at playing against other teams because the way they set up tactically just suits better. And I think Brighton are that team that could hurt us through the middle if we don't set up correctly. So for me, this game's going to test that, because, you know, I've been worried about Enzo and what he does in the middle of the pitch when it comes to defensive coverage. Caicedo's definitely playing a lot better, but I don't think just by himself he can carry that burden. So that's what I'll be looking for in the game.
I think, honestly, that's exactly the point I was going to make too. So I think.
I bet it was, mate.
No. I was going to say the one thing I wanted to see from this game, because, like, the attack is already pretty much like, we're good. I want to see another great performance from Sanchez. But number one, if Enzo Fernandez can have a masterclass here, that will be absolutely huge. And I think, yes, in terms of that, like, balanced excitement, like, yeah, I'm the first guy that's going to go out there and just throw out crazy shouts, because why not? Like, someone out there is going to get excited about it. It's going to make their day, just even thinking that Chelsea could compete for a Premier League title. Still a bit too soon for that. But if Enzo Fernandez can put in a masterclass where he's not only defensively helping Caicedo out, because it's not sustainable for Caicedo to have to do all of that work every flipping game. If Enzo can provide something going forward as well as sharing that workload, then it's just getting better and better every week, isn't it? I think I'm not going to give my score prediction now because I'll do that in my preview, which will go out tomorrow. But if you could say a score, Harry, for Chelsea Brighton this weekend, thoughts off the top of your head, off your skull?
So, I think we will concede. I think we'll concede a goal. But I think we've got so much firepower right now, and we are looking better and better. I don't think that the defensive frailties will be as bad as they have been in those moments. So I think there might be a moment where we concede a goal because, you know, Sanchez, like you rightly pointed out, George, Sanchez has been turning in, even against West Ham, really good performances. So I'm going to say 2-1 Chelsea. I'm going to go 2-1 win to Chelsea.
That's a solid... honestly, that would be unbelievable. Like a nice little hard-fought, tough opponent, but find a way. Unbelievable.
Yeah, like an 85th minute winner. Something like that.
Yeah, like a Levi Colwill bullet header at the back post where he almost crashes into the post at the same time, gets a little cut here, but he's fine. No serious head injury. Like old school, blood, gore. We want it all. We're going to win it all. We've already won it all. This has been the 3 More Points podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Subscribe to a guy called Henry. Goodbye, everyone.